Hello everybody, I'm Dr. Urvashi Sharma, Associate Professor, Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, Jagannath University, Jaipur. In today's session, we look at government's newsprint policy and how emergency and the press, what was the impact of emergency on press and why emergency is known as the black phase in Indian journalism. So let's have a look. So first let us understand what is a newsprint. Newsprint is used worldwide for printing newspapers, brochures, and other printed materials for mass dissemination and distribution. It was invented by Charles Fennerty in Canada in 1844. What is it? It is a cheap, low quality paper used for printing newspapers. It usually has a whitish tint and a distinctive feel. So there are some advantages of newsprint and some disadvantages. Let us look at the advantages first. Newsprint is relatively inexpensive compared to the grades of paper used for glossy magazines and sales brochures. It is more durable because it can run through the modern high-speed printing presses. Third, it can accept all four colors of printing, which is CMYK, which is cyan, yellow, magenta, and black, and meet the needs of a typical newspaper print. Now, if we look at the disadvantages, it is not suitable for any type of project due to its low quality as compared to the other types of paper. So let us understand what was the newsprint policy of the government. Newsprint was under the ambit of Essential Commodity Act 1955 and India was totally dependent on imported newsprint. Import of a newsprint was canalized through the State Trading Corporation, a Government of India enterprise. As a first step towards deregulation, import of newsprint was decanalized in 1992. Now the import-export policy in March 1994 permitted import of newsprint by actual user. The term here, actual user, was used for those publishers and printers who were registered with Registrar of Newspaper in India and were holding the certificate of entitlement from the office of RNI were the actual consumer, and these people were eligible to procure newsprint from Schedule 1 mill or import on a concessional duty of 5%. It was bought under Open Journal License with effect from 1st May 1995. In July 1997, newsprint was delicensed. In 2004, newsprint was taken out of the Essential Commodities Act and Newsprint Control Order was resigned. This provides for registration of mills manufacturing newsprint under Schedule 1. Mills registered under the schedule were exempted from excise duty subject to actual user condition. National Newsprint and Paper Mill Limited, now NEPA Limited, was the first indigenous mill to produce newsprint in India. Now let us look at emergency and press. In the early hours of June 26, 1975, then President Farukhuddin Ali Ahmed declared a state of emergency in India, citing threat of national security by internal disturbances. The then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi suspended the civil liberties, free press, among others, and the constitution was amended and altered. During emergency, journalists, opposition leaders, and activists were thrown in jail under Derochin rule of Indira Gandhi government. The president has proclaimed emergency. There is nothing to panic about, declared Indira Gandhi on All India Radio. While things changed overnight and India was in a phase of constitutional crisis during emergency, the freedom of press was one that took a dark turn. With freedom of speech being suspended as a fundamental right, the printing presses were raided and for the next 2 days newspapers went out of circulation. What was the what was the press told? The Indira Gandhi government laid out some ground rules for the journalists across the country and they were told about certain guidelines to follow. 3 years ago, Kalpana Sharma, former editor of Himmat, said, by the time they came to know what exactly was happening in nation, many leaders and activists were in jail. Sharma said, amongst many rule was, where news is plainly dangerous, newspaper will assist the chief press advisor by suppressing it themselves. Where doubt exists, reference may and should be made to the nearest press advisor. As the media was under the attack in the country during 21-month-long emergency period, the foreign media was on its heel to get the stories out about the situation in the country where constitutional rights were suspended. The Indian media was informed not to pay heed to rumors. All the newspapers in the country were asked to take permission before publishing any piece by the chief press advisor, a position that was created to censor the news, which means pre-censorship was in action. Arrests and threats. Most of the mainstream media, newspapers, and magazines were under the warth of emergency. The scissors of censor cut through big publishers like Himmat, Janta, Frontier, Sadhana, Swarajya, among many others. Some were threatened to be thrown out of publications and others were put in jail. The Indian Express and the Statesman were first one to protest through their editions. As a revolt, the Indian Express and Statesman left their editorial pages empty. This move was soon followed by other publications too. According to journalists from the Times of London, the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times were expelled. The Guardian and the Economist correspondent flew back to United Kingdom after receiving threats. Mark Tully, the voice of BBC, was also withdrawn by the channel. According to Home Ministry, in May of 1976, almost 7,000 journalists and media persons were arrested. That is why emergency not only brought about the constitutional changes, but it also curtailed the freedom of speech and expression and freedom of press at large. Therefore, it is considered as a black phase in for the Indian press or media. Revolt and freedom. Journalist Kuldeep Nair was arrested by the police for protesting against emergency with other scribes in Delhi. The opposition leaders were also fighting the same cause across the country. One of them was a veteran Bharatiya Janata Party and the then Janata Party leader L.K. Advani, who spent months in jails during emergency. Advani's word rang in the ears of every Indian after emergency was lifted. He addressed media and said, "You were asked only to bend, but you crawled." The president has proclaimed emergency, that there's nothing to panic about, announced Indira Gandhi on All India Radio. But overnight, the entire face of the constitutional crisis existed and emergency emerged as a tool to curb the freedom of press, turning everything into a dark. Thank you.